When my daughter walked away from home, I didn't chase after her. I didn't shout or beg her to stay. I just stood there by the front door, my hands shaking, watching her walk down the driveway with a small suitcase and a heart full of pride. The morning was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy, like the world itself is holding its breath. I remember thinking, she'll turn around, she'll look back. But she didn't. That was the moment I felt something inside me tear, not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet breaking. The kind that only a mother's heart can hear. My name is Margaret Lewis, but everyone calls me Maggie. I was 48 the year my daughter Emily walked away from home. We lived in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone waves when they drive by and neighbors bring over casseroles when someone's sick. Our house wasn't big, but it was full of warmth, the smell of cinnamon rolls on weekends, the sound of old country music playing in the kitchen, the creak of the porch swing where Emily and I used to sit every summer evening. Those small things, that's what I thought family meant. Emily was my only child. After years of trying and praying, she came into our lives like a miracle. I still remember the first time I held her, her tiny hands, the soft fuzz of her hair, the way she clung to my finger as if to say, "Don't ever let go." And I didn't. Not for a long time. She grew up bright and curious, the kind of kid who asked 100 questions before breakfast. She'd help me bake cookies, sitting on the counter with flour on her nose, giggling like sunshine. Every night before bed, she'd whisper, "Tell me a story, Mom." And I'd make one up, stories about brave little girls and mothers who waited for their children to come home. Funny how life turns those bedtime stories into something real. As Emily got older, things changed. She became quieter, not cold, just distant, the way teenagers sometimes do. Her world started to stretch beyond our home. She spent more time in her room, more time with friends I didn't know, and less time talking to me. I told myself it was normal. She was growing up, finding herself, but deep down I missed her. I missed our talks on the porch swing, our laughter in the kitchen, even the way she used to roll her eyes when I nagged her about cleaning her room. My husband, Tom, was a simple man. He worked long hours at the auto shop and didn't say much, but he loved us in his quiet way. Where I'd comfort, he'd correct. Where I'd listen, he'd advise. He thought love meant teaching her how to be strong. I thought love meant holding her when she cried. Between us, we tried to give her everything we could. One evening, Emily came home later than usual. The clock on the wall had ticked past 10. Dinner was cold. When she finally walked in, she looked tired, distracted, different. "Where have you been, honey?" I asked gently. "Just out with friends," she said, dropping her bag on the chair. "You could have called," I whispered. She sighed. "Mom, I'm not a little kid anymore." I smiled, but something in her tone stung. I turned off the kitchen light and said, "You'll always be my little girl, Emily. That's never going to change." She didn't respond. She just went upstairs, and the sound of her door closing echoed louder than any words could. Life carried on. Graduation came and went. Emily was smart. She got accepted to a university 2 states away. I was proud, but the thought of her leaving filled me with a quiet ache. When she told us the news, Tom smiled proudly. "That's my girl," he said, patting her back. I smiled too, but my heart felt heavy. That night, when I was alone in the kitchen, I cried over the sink. It wasn't sadness for her success. It was the fear of losing the laughter that made our home feel alive. The weeks before she moved out were busy: shopping, packing, phone calls, lists upon lists. Every time I folded one of her shirts or packed a photo frame, I felt like I was tucking away a piece of my own heart. She was excited, full of plans and dreams. "Mom," she said one night, "I can't wait to start fresh. It's going to be so different there." Her eyes were shining with hope. I forced a smile. "It'll be wonderful, sweetheart. Just remember, no matter where you go, this will always be your home." She nodded, but I could tell her mind was already somewhere else, out there in the world she couldn't wait to explore. The day she left, the sky was pale and soft, like it couldn't decide whether to rain or shine. We loaded her bags into the trunk. Tom tried to keep his voice steady, but I saw the way his jaw tightened. Emily hugged us both. "I'll call you every day," she said, smiling. I kissed her cheek. "You better, or I'll drive down there and embarrass you in front of all your friends." She laughed, and for a moment it felt like old times. But when she got into the car and waved goodbye, something deep inside me whispered, "This is it. Everything changes today." The house felt empty after she left. Too clean, too quiet. I'd find myself walking into her room just to feel close to her. The smell of her perfume still lingered in the air, soft and sweet, like a ghost of the girl who used to live there. At first, she called every night. She'd tell me about her classes, her roommates, the new cafe she found near campus. Her voice sounded happy, full of energy, but slowly the calls became shorter, then less frequent. Eventually, weeks would go by without hearing from her. When I asked, she'd say, "Sorry, Mom, things have just been crazy." I told her it was okay. But when I hung up, I'd sit there in the quiet kitchen, staring at the phone, wishing I could hold her hand just one more time. Tom would say, "She's just busy, Maggie. That's what happens when kids grow up." I'd nod, pretending to agree, but inside I was scared. Scared that maybe I'd done something wrong, that maybe she didn't need me anymore. I started writing little notes in a journal, letters I never sent. "Your favorite pie turned out terrible without you here. The porch swing creaks louder these days. Dad fixed your bike even though you're not here to ride it." It made me feel like I was still talking to her. Like she could still hear me somehow. One Sunday afternoon, I was folding laundry when my neighbor Linda stopped by. She had her phone in her hand and said, "Maggie, I think I saw Emily online. She looks so grown up." I smiled politely. "Oh, what's she up to now?" Linda turned the screen toward me. There was Emily, my beautiful girl, smiling beside a young man I didn't recognize. Something inside me sank. She looked happy, but there was no mention of home, no trace of where she came from, just her living a new life that didn't seem to include us anymore. I thanked Linda and went back inside. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking of that picture of her smile that once belonged to me, now shared with someone else. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Her calls stopped completely. I tried to stay strong, but every corner of the house reminded me of her. Her empty room, her chipped coffee mug, the calendar on her wall that still marked the day she left. Some mornings I'd make her favorite pancakes out of habit, then remember she wasn't there to eat them. I'd sit at the kitchen table with two plates and whisper, "Good morning, sweetheart," to the chair across from me. I started going for walks to keep myself busy. Sometimes I'd pass by the high school and watch the students laughing as they left for the day. They reminded me of Emily, so full of life, so sure the world would always wait for them. I wondered if she ever thought of me when she saw a mother waiting by the gate. I wondered if she ever missed home the way I missed her. But I never let myself stay angry, because anger doesn't fill the silence, love does. Even when it hurts, even when it's quiet, it's still love. And though I didn't know it yet, my story with Emily wasn't over. Not by a long shot. It was only the beginning of a long, quiet waiting and the hope that one day she'd find her way back to me. After Emily left for college, time began to move differently for me. Days blended together. Mornings felt too long, nights too quiet. Tom kept himself busy with work, but I drifted through the house like a shadow, folding laundry that didn't need folding, watering plants that were already wet, pretending everything was fine. When the phone rang, I'd rush to it hoping it was her. Sometimes it was. Most times it wasn't. Her voice, when I did hear it, sounded far away, not just in distance, but in spirit. "Hi, Mom," she'd say quickly. "Just calling to check in. Classes are crazy right now." I'd ask about her meals, her health, whether she was sleeping enough. She'd laugh and say, "Mom, I'm not 12 anymore." Then the call would end and the silence would crawl right back in. I tried not to worry. Every parent says it, kids need space. But there's a kind of silence that doesn't mean peace. It means something is slipping away. I started mailing her little care packages, cookies, scarves, notes tucked inside saying, "Love you, Mom." Sometimes she'd text a quick thank you, sometimes not at all. One afternoon, I got a call from her university. She'd missed tuition paperwork. The woman on the phone said politely, "We've been trying to reach your daughter." My heart raced. "Is she okay?" "Oh, yes, she's fine, just seems a little distracted lately." Distracted, that word stayed with me. A month later, Emily came home for Thanksgiving. I cleaned the house like it was Christmas morning. Her room smelled fresh again, her bed made with the old quilt my mother stitched years ago. When she arrived, I ran to hug her. For a second, everything felt right again, but the moment passed. She looked older, her hair shorter, her clothes different, her eyes restless. At dinner, Tom asked her about school. She spoke quickly, avoiding our eyes. Then she said something that made my fork freeze midair. "Actually, I've been thinking about moving in with some friends next semester off campus." Tom frowned. "That means more rent," she shrugged. "I'll manage." I forced a smile. "We just want you to be safe, honey." "I am safe, Mom. You don't have to worry all the time." The words were gentle, but they cut deep, because worrying was the only way I still felt connected to her. That night after she went to bed, I stood outside her door. I wanted to go in to brush her hair like I used to when she was little, but I didn't. I just whispered through the door, "I love you, sweetheart." I don't know if she heard me. The next morning, she slept in late. I made pancakes, her favorite, but she barely touched them. Instead, she spent most of the day texting on her phone. I pretended not to notice, but every vibration of that phone felt like a wall building higher between us. Before she left to return to school, she hugged me quickly. "Don't worry, Mom, I'll be fine." I held her tight. "Just remember, you can always come home." She smiled faintly. "I know." And then she was gone again. After the holidays, the distance grew wider. Calls turned into texts, texts turned into silence. I'd see her post photos online, smiling with new friends, celebrating birthdays, visiting places she'd never told me about. I should have been happy for her, but sometimes happiness can sting when you're not a part of it. One evening, Tom came home from work and found me sitting by the window holding my phone. "Maggie," he said softly, "you can't keep staring at that thing all night." I smiled weakly. "She used to call around this time." He sighed. "She's just living her life. Don't make yourself sick over it." But he didn't understand. It wasn't just about missing her. It was the fear that she might forget the sound of my voice, the way her name sounded when I said it with love. Spring came, then summer. She didn't visit that year. When I asked, she said, "Mom, it's hard to travel right now. I'm taking summer classes." I believed her, or maybe I just wanted to. I filled my days with little routines, gardening, baking, volunteering at church, but nothing filled the emptiness she left behind. Every mother knows that feeling, when your hands are busy but your heart has nowhere to go. One Saturday morning, while I was folding laundry, a small envelope slipped out of one of Emily's old sweaters. It was a letter she'd written in high school to her future self. The paper was folded neatly, the handwriting still neat and round. "Dear me," it began, "I hope you're brave. I hope you chase your dreams. And I hope you never forget where you came from." I sat on the bed and cried, not loud tears, just quiet ones that rolled down without warning. Because somewhere between then and now, she'd forgotten. Or maybe I'd failed to remind her gently enough. Later that summer, Tom and I decided to visit her without telling her first. We missed her and we wanted to surprise her. We drove 5 hours to her apartment complex near campus. When she opened the door, her face went pale. "Mom, Dad, what are you doing here?" Tom laughed. "Just thought we'd drop by and take our girl to lunch." She hesitated. "You should have called." Her apartment was small but tidy. There were photos on the wall, none of us. A framed picture of her and that same young man from before. He came out of the kitchen, smiling politely. "Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Lewis, I'm Ryan." I forced a smile. "Nice to meet you, Ryan." But inside, my heart tightened. At lunch, Emily kept the conversation light. She told us about her job at a cafe, her classes, her plans. She never once mentioned coming home. When the check came, she insisted on paying her share. That small gesture, meant to show independence, felt like another goodbye. On the drive back, Tom said, "She's doing fine." That's all we ever wanted. I nodded, but I couldn't stop thinking about how she'd looked at us, kind but distant, like we were guests in her new life. Months went by, then came the day she stopped answering completely. Calls went to voicemail, texts stayed unread. I started waking up in the middle of the night, checking my phone just to make sure it was working. Sometimes I'd call and let it ring just to hear her recorded voice say, "Hey, it's Emily." "Leave a message." That voice, cheerful and young, became my lullaby. One evening, Tom found me sitting on the couch holding her childhood photo. He sat beside me and said quietly, "Maybe it's time to let her figure things out." I whispered, "What if she never comes back?" He didn't answer. He just held my hand. That silence said everything. The following winter, I got an invitation in the mail, not from Emily, but from one of her old friends. It was a wedding invitation. At the bottom, in small print, it said, "Bridesmaid Emily Lewis." She hadn't even told me about it. I stared at the card for a long time. I thought about the little girl who used to twirl around the living room in her toy veil, saying she'd want me there in the front row no matter what. And now she hadn't even mentioned it. That night I sat in the dark kitchen, holding that card against my chest. It was the first time I said the words out loud. She's really gone, but love is stubborn. Even when logic says let go, the heart whispers wait, so I waited. Through birthdays she forgot, through holidays she skipped, through the ache of hearing other mothers talk about their children calling home. Every night before bed, I'd whisper, "Good night, Emily," into the quiet. It became my prayer. The day Tom got sick, everything changed again. It was sudden chest pains, hospital visits, long nights in waiting rooms. He was strong, but the doctor's words were heavy. You need to take it easy. I called Emily right away. No answer. I left a message, voice trembling. Sweetheart, it's Mom. Your dad's in the hospital. Please call me. She didn't, not that night, not the next. By the third day, I sat beside Tom's hospital bed, holding his hand, pretending I wasn't broken inside. He looked at me weakly and said, She'll come, Maggie. She just doesn't know how to face us right now. Maybe he was right, maybe she was scared, or maybe she was just too far gone, caught up in a life where we no longer fit. When Tom came home, he was weaker, quieter. Our days slowed down, but I kept a kind of hope alive, the kind that hurts but still breathes. I baked her favorite pies even though she wasn't there to eat them. I kept her room clean, the bed made, the light on. Because somewhere deep down, I still believed she'd walk through that door again. And though I didn't realize it at the time, the distance between us had reached its edge. Something was about to happen, something that would break what little was left, before healing could ever begin. The day Emily left for good began like any other, the sky a pale gray, the kind that makes you feel both calm and heavy at the same time. I woke early as usual and went into the kitchen. The smell of coffee filled the air, but even that familiar scent didn't bring comfort. I looked around the house. Every corner whispered her name, her shoes by the door, her backpack on the chair, her favorite mug on the counter. I ran my hand over them as if I could somehow hold onto her through the touch. Tom was quiet that morning. He always got quieter when life pressed hard against us. I poured him a cup of coffee and tried to make small talk. Big day for her, I said softly. He nodded, his eyes on his mug. Yeah, big day. We didn't say much more. Words felt too fragile to hold the weight of what was coming. Emily came down the stairs carrying her suitcase. She was smiling, but it was a nervous, tight smile. I noticed the way her fingers fidgeted with the handle. I noticed the way her eyes darted around the room, taking in the walls, the photos, the furniture, our home. She turned to me and said, Mom, I'll miss you. I smiled through the ache in my chest. I'll miss you too, sweetheart. Tom came over and hugged her. You take care of yourself, Emily. Call us when you can. I will, she said. Her voice was soft, but I could sense the distance that had been growing for months. We walked to the car together, carrying her suitcase. The driveway looked longer than it ever had. Every step felt like a small goodbye, like something inside me was being left behind with each footfall. She stopped and turned. Thanks for everything, Mom, for all of it. I wanted to tell her not to go. I wanted to say, stay. Don't leave me here alone, but I didn't. I just smiled and said, always, Emily, always. When she got in the car, she looked back once. I waved, pretending I wasn't shaking. Tom waved too, then the car drove away. And just like that, she was gone. The house felt emptier than ever. I walked inside and sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the chair she had just vacated. The silence was deafening. Every tick of the clock sounded like a reminder that she wasn't coming back. For days, I wandered the house in a daze. I cleaned, I cooked, I went through her things, but it was like touching memories I could never hold. I cried quietly in her empty room, letting the tears fall onto her bedspread, onto the pillow that still smelled faintly of her shampoo. Tom tried to comfort me, but even he seemed helpless. Time will help Maggie, he said. I wanted to believe him, but how do you heal from the sound of a door closing on the person you love most in the world? The calls didn't come, texts didn't come. Weeks went by without a single word. I would wake up in the middle of the night, my phone clutched in my hand, hoping somehow she'd reached out, hoping she'd hear my silent cries across the miles. I imagined her life in her new city, her apartment, her friends, the routine she had built without us. I tried not to be angry. I told myself she was growing up, making choices, learning life, but it hurt. Every fiber of me ached. One evening, I found her old diary tucked under her bed. I opened it and read entries from years ago, little notes about school, friendships, dreams. I smiled at the memories. She was still my little girl in those pages. But the final entries broke my heart. They were full of plans for the future, excitement about leaving, hints that home wasn't enough anymore. I closed the diary and held it to my chest. I whispered, "Come back to me someday, Emily." I'm still here. The first winter without her was the hardest. Snow fell softly outside, covering the world in white. I would sit by the window and watch the neighborhood kids play, wishing one of them was Emily. I baked her favorite cookies, but they stayed in the tin untouched. I left an extra plate at the table, imagining her walking through the door and taking a bite. Tom tried to keep the household routine, but I could see the sadness in his eyes, too. We were both grieving, though in different ways. He buried himself in work. I buried myself in memories. Then came the letters. At first, I thought it was a mistake, bills, postcards from friends, invitations. But then I realized they were from Emily. Short notes mailed weeks after she left, simple messages like, "Mom, Dad, I'm okay. Love, Emily." They weren't much, just small scraps of connection, but I clung to them. I read them over and over, memorizing her handwriting, imagining her sitting at a desk somewhere thinking of us. Still, nothing compared to her being here. Still, nothing replaced the warmth of her presence. The day I realized how far she had drifted completely was quiet and ordinary, which made it worse. I had gone to the grocery store and saw her in the checkout line, but it wasn't my Emily. It was someone else entirely. Someone taller, more confident, laughing with friends, carrying her life in her hands. She didn't look my way. She didn't recognize the woman who had held her hand for 18 years. I left the store without saying anything. My chest ached as I walked back to the car. I thought about all the little moments she had left behind, the hugs, the bedtime stories, the pancakes in the morning. And now they were gone, replaced by a life that didn't include me. That night I sat at the kitchen table, staring at her empty chair. I didn't cry at first. I just sat there, letting the silence wash over me. Finally, I whispered into the quiet room, "I love you, Emily, no matter what." Always, the words hung in the air. I didn't expect her to hear them, but saying them made the ache a little more bearable. Weeks later, Emily called. Her voice trembled slightly. "Mom, Dad, I just wanted you to know I'm okay." It wasn't much. It wasn't a long conversation, but it was enough to remind me that somewhere inside, the bond hadn't broken entirely. I told her I loved her. I told her we missed her. She said she loved us too, and then the silence returned. I began to understand something crucial, that love doesn't vanish when someone leaves, it waits. It waits in the meals you make, in the letters you never send, in the whispers of bedtime memories. It waits in the hope that someday they'll come back to the place that will always be their home. And that hope, stubborn, quiet, relentless, is what kept me going through the hardest months of my life. By the end of that year, Emily had left for good. Her apartment was far, her life fully separate. I stopped leaving plates on the table, stopped baking cookies for no one, but I never stopped loving her. Not for a day, not for a single heartbeat. And though my heart felt broken, I began learning to carry the pain quietly, like a secret treasure of love that only a mother can understand. The stage was set for the moment when our story would finally turn, a moment neither of us knew was coming yet, but that would bring her back home and finally begin the healing we both needed. The weeks turned into months. Our home felt emptier than ever. The walls that once echoed with Emily's laughter now carried only my soft footsteps. Every morning I woke up hoping, just hoping, that she'd walk through the door. But the door remained closed. Tom tried to keep himself busy. He worked longer hours, fixing cars, doing odd jobs, anything to keep his mind off the silence. I understood. I didn't blame him for that. We each had our own way of carrying the ache, him through work, me through waiting. I started keeping a journal, not just any journal, but one full of letters for Emily. I wrote about the small things she used to love. Emily, your favorite roses bloom today. They're pink and bright, just like you used to say. I tried making your favorite chicken stew. It wasn't as good without you here. I went for a walk today and saw kids playing in the park. You would have loved it. Sometimes I folded these letters carefully and placed them in a box, hoping that one day she would read them. Sometimes I left them on her pillow, even though I knew she wasn't coming back yet. Writing them made the waiting bearable. It made me feel like we were still connected, even across the distance she had built. I took long walks every evening. I'd wander through the neighborhood, watching families gather in their yards, children playing, parents calling out names that filled the air with warmth. It was both comforting and painful. I felt happy for them, but also painfully aware that my Emily wasn't there, and the laughter I longed to hear was gone. I would sit on the park bench sometimes, just staring at the horizon, imagining what she was doing in her apartment. Was she studying, laughing with friends, eating dinner alone like I sometimes did when the house was too quiet? I tried not to think about the possibility that she might forget what home felt like. But I couldn't stop my mind from wandering to that painful thought. The holidays were the hardest. Thanksgiving came and the house felt like a museum. I set the table as I always did, her plate at the head, her chair pulled out slightly just the way she liked it. I cooked her favorite dishes, though no one ate them. Tom tried to smile. He even joked about the missing laughter, but it didn't reach his eyes. I watched the empty chair and whispered to it, "I hope you're happy, Emily. I hope you know we love you." Christmas wasn't any better. We put up the tree, decorated it with ornaments she had made as a child. The lights twinkled, but the magic felt distant. Tom and I gave each other small smiles, small gifts, and tried to pretend the absence wasn't there. But I felt the emptiness more than ever. One day I found a box of Emily's old things in the attic. I opened it slowly. Inside were drawings she made when she was little, stuffed animals, letters to Santa, birthday cards she had saved. I held each item carefully, as if touching them could somehow bring her closer. I found a small note she had written to me when she was 10. "Mom, you're my hero. I love you to the moon and back." I held that note against my chest and cried. It was a reminder of what had been and what I still longed for. Even though she had left a piece of herself here, in every corner of the house, in every memory, in every heartbeat of mine. The months passed slowly. I learned to do things without expecting her to be there. I baked cookies for the neighbors, I volunteered at the library, I planted flowers in the garden. Life went on, but the ache never fully went away. Sometimes, when I thought no one was watching, I would pull out my phone and scroll through old photos of Emily. Her birthday parties, her first day of school, her soccer games. I smiled through tears, remembering how full of life she had been. One evening, I sat on the couch holding a photo of Emily when she was 8. She was grinning from ear to ear, her hair tied in pigtails, holding a giant lollipop. I whispered to the photo, "I'll wait for you, Emily. No matter how long it takes, I'll wait." I started writing letters again, not just for me, but hoping someday she would read them. "Dear Emily, I baked your favorite pie today. I thought about you the whole time. I hope you're laughing somewhere, even if it's not with me. Dear Emily, I went to the park today and saw a little girl playing with a red ball. She reminded me of you. Dear Emily, your dad fixed the swing on the porch. It's still creaky just like you liked it. I never sent them. I wasn't ready to let go, but I also knew she wasn't ready to come back. So I wrote and I waited, and I loved her silently across the miles. Then came a morning when I realized something I had avoided for months. She had grown up. Completely. The little girl who used to run to me when she was scared, who used to demand bedtime stories, who used to leave sticky fingerprints on the window, she was gone. She had built a life without us. And yet, somewhere deep down, I knew that didn't mean the bond was broken. I just had to wait. One day, I received a small package in the mail. Inside was a scarf, the one she always wore in the winter, and a note: "Mom, I miss home. I'm trying to figure things out. Love, Emily." I cried for hours, not tears of anger, not tears of sadness, tears of relief. She was still thinking of us. She still loved us, even if she couldn't come back yet. It was enough to keep hope alive. I started looking at life differently. I learned to find comfort in small things: a phone call, even if brief, a letter, even if delayed, a memory, even if painful. And in that quiet, waiting way, I began to heal. Not completely, not all at once, but enough to be ready for the day she would return. By the time the following spring came, the house felt like a place of memories, but also a place of hope. I still left her plate at the table sometimes, just in case. I still whispered her name in the quiet. I still baked pies, still tended the garden, still held onto the belief that one day Emily would walk back through the door. And though the silence had been long and painful, it had taught me something important. Love doesn't vanish, it waits. It waits patiently, quietly, and endlessly. And then one ordinary afternoon, something extraordinary began to happen. A knock at the door, a familiar voice, the sound of small footsteps that I had waited for longer than I could have imagined. I didn't know it yet, but the moment that would change everything, the moment of reunion, of forgiveness, of healing, was finally arriving. It was a quiet afternoon when I first heard the knock on the door. At first, I didn't recognize it. It was soft, tentative, almost hesitant. My heart skipped. I froze, my hands still on the dish towel I had been drying. And then I heard it, a voice I had missed for so long. "Mom, it's me." Time stopped. I didn't know how to move at first. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else. Then the door opened slowly, and there she was, Emily, my Emily, standing in the doorway with a small suitcase and eyes that held both apology and love. I dropped everything and ran to her. I held her tighter than I had held anyone in years. Tears streamed down my face, but I didn't care. She cried too, hiding her face against my shoulder, whispering, "I'm sorry, Mom, I'm so sorry." And in that instant, every lonely month, every ache in my chest, every sleepless night, it all disappeared. Tom appeared behind me, his eyes wide and wet. "Emily," he said softly, and she ran into his arms. For a few minutes, the three of us stood there, holding each other, as if the world outside had stopped and nothing else mattered. Finally, we sat down in the living room. Emily looked at us, and I could see the guilt in her eyes. I didn't mean to hurt you," she said quietly. I shook my head. "Oh, sweetheart, you didn't hurt us. You just needed to find your way." She nodded, tears falling freely now. "I didn't know how to come back," she admitted. "I thought I had to do everything on my own." I smiled softly. "You did, you had to live your life. But you're home, this will always be here for you, and I will always be here for you." For the first time in months, our house felt full again. The kitchen smelled of coffee and fresh bread. The living room had the sound of laughter, the kind that had been missing for far too long. We talked for hours. Not about her leaving, not about the silence, but about everything: school, friends, small adventures, and even mistakes. I told her how much I had missed her. She told me how scared she had been. And through every word, through every pause, through every tear, we rebuilt something we had thought was fragile: our connection. The next days were full of small joys. We cooked together like we used to. Emily chopped vegetables, laughing when she made a mess. I made her favorite pie, and she helped me taste it, smiling at the familiar flavors. We walked in the park together, just like old times, and I listened to her stories, fully present, without judgment or worry. For the first time in a long time, I felt that deep warmth of being a mother, of truly sharing life with my daughter again. One evening after dinner, Emily sat on the couch next to me. "Mom," she said softly, "I wanted to say thank you for everything, for waiting, for never giving up on me." I smiled, brushing a stray hair from her face. "You don't have to thank me, Emily. That's what love does. It waits, it forgives, it holds on even when it's hard." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I understand that now," she said. "I understand how lucky I am to have a home to come back to." And in that moment, I realized something I had always known but never fully appreciated until now. Love isn't about control. It's not about demanding presence or perfect obedience. Love is about patience. It's about holding space for someone to grow, even if that growth leads them far away. And when they return, love is what welcomes them, whole and complete, without condition. Over the next weeks, we rebuilt our routine together. We laughed in the kitchen, argued playfully about chores, shared stories late into the night. Emily reconnected with her friends, but she always came home at the end of the day. It wasn't perfect. There were moments of hesitation, moments when the past months weighed heavily, but there was also joy and hope, and a love that had survived absence, distance, and fear. One quiet afternoon, Emily asked me to sit with her in her old room. The walls were the same, but the energy had changed. "This is my room again," she said softly, "and it always will be." I held her hand. "It always has been, Emily, always will be." We sat there in silence for a long time. No words were necessary. Just the quiet comfort of presence, the feeling of home restored. Looking back, I realized that her leaving taught me something important. It taught me patience, resilience, and the strength of unconditional love. It taught me that children will leave, sometimes for months, sometimes for years, but the bond of family doesn't break. It waits, it forgives, it welcomes back with open arms. The day Emily returned home was more than a reunion. It was a lesson, a reminder that life can be painful and beautiful at the same time, that love can endure distance, silence, and fear. And that forgiveness, given and received, can heal wounds that time alone cannot. Now, when I see Emily in the kitchen, helping me chop vegetables or tasting a pie, I smile. I hold her hand a little tighter, hug her a little longer, because I know how precious this is. And I know deep in my heart that no matter where life takes her next, she will always have a home here. A home filled with love, a home that waited patiently, a home that forgives. Sometimes at night, when the house is quiet and Emily is asleep, I still whisper, "Good night, Emily, I love you." And I know she hears it in her dreams, in her heart, in the unbreakable bond between a mother and her daughter. Because love, real love, never leaves. The end.